coming up on Small Town Charm, shady real estate deals here in town. And selfishly, the thing that I've been waiting to talk about since we had the idea for this podcast, we finally reveal it on this episode. So stay tuned to Small Town Charm. Welcome into Small Town Charm. My name is Daniel. We got Mike. We got Chris. Thank you again for watching. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, leave a rating and review, all that stuff that you know helps us out. It really does, so please do it. So this week, we are going to talk about interesting things regarding real estate in this town. There was something that happened relatively recently as we were recording this episode, and it at least made me think of some things that I've heard rumblings and rumors of for the past 5 years or so that I've lived here. And I know that these two guys have more to the story than I probably do. So I'd love to talk about it. But again, as we're recording this episode, we're pretty fresh off of the recent election. And there's been, after the election, already some shady stuff happening with real estate. I don't know which one of you want to describe what has happened, allegedly. Speaking of that, let me say it again in this episode. This show is for entertainment purposes only. We're not saying anything we're not journalists. We're not reporting that this is all fact. Don't take our word for it. If you hear something that sounds weird, fishy, maybe not true, maybe it is true, go look it up, do your own research, ask around, but don't take our word for it. It may not be true. We believe it's true, but that doesn't mean that we're right. All right, great. So who wants to share what's happened recently?
I love the disclaimer. I like it.
I also love that you changed. Changed outfits.
Well, this is like a week later, Mike. What are you talking about? Of course I changed clothes.
Mike, we're probably gonna have to tag team the story a little bit because I didn't pay.
So why don't you describe what happened?
Yeah,
this week?
I didn't pay super close attention to it, but I know the rough details. So the day after the election, a guy posted. It was on the 4-in-1.
It's less than a day.
So it was basically like the night of the election almost.
Yeah, the morning after.
The morning after, man, and talk about like grave stomping. Oh man,
but it's just so great,
so bad. But the morning after the election, a gentleman who's a landowner on Nolensville Road and has been here for a number of years and has been in talks with realtors about selling his land as a part of all the development that's coming. Posted this kind of cryptic post, basically saying, "Is it normal?" And he addressed it to the rulers of Nolensville.
The dramatics are awesome.
Yeah, interesting.
I loved every character of that post.
Yeah, there's a monarchy or something like that. Well, it's great, but yeah, it was addressed to the rulers of Nolensville, and it was basically asking, is it normal for a person to call another person's real estate agent and tell them that they control, this was the language that was used, they control the new council, and so the zoning that they're wanting to get on their land in a sale is not going to happen. And it's humorous to me. The timing of it all is just super suspect.
So the funniest part about it is because after the last 2 years we just had, everybody collectively looked at the post and was like, no, it's not normal. And if you've been around or if you've talked to people, it is very normal in Nolensville for that to happen. It's very, very normal for real estate deals to be hinged on what happens in these board meetings. And they're very specific to to these projects, right?
Yep.
So the one that comes to my mind right away is the car wash. The car wash doesn't happen if the government doesn't step in and give them a variance.
Can we just dive into it?
Let's go.
I mean, who wants to start?
I'll start.
He's like, yeah.
It's 3 years in the making here. So the car wash doesn't happen if the government doesn't step in, which is not. I mean, I'm not opposed to that.
Why is that?
because they needed to put the parking lot in the back. In order for this design to work, for this parcel to work, it had to be a 2-story car wash with the parking lot in the back. The zoning ordinance had it where the parking lot had to be in the front, and I think they couldn't have 2 stories.
They needed a variance.
It couldn't be 2 stories, and the parking lot had to be on the street side, basically.
Yeah.
Right, so they had to go to the BZA, which I sit on that board now.
Is that Board of Zoning and Appeals? Is that what it is? Yeah, okay.
And then they had to prove hardship and get granted a variance. That I love that process. I serve on that board now, and I'm all in favor of the government stepping in and fixing a hardship that they've created on a landowner.
Sure.
That's I'm all for that. The owner of the car wash was a BOMA member. He was a vice mayor of the town.
Yes.
A person that brought the motion for approval on the BZA level was a fellow alderman serving on the BZA, Tommy Duggar.
Yep.
So that
there's connection number one.
There's that's the government voting, controlling what happens with the sale of land. The person that sold him the land is Travis Blunt, who then gets appointed to the
Planning Commission.
Let's just
get appointed to the Planning Commission.
Let's do a rundown of all the
step.
Yes, all the people involved in this.
It's going to get confusing if we don't.
Yeah, because people are going to hear these names and they're not going to understand it all. So, the car wash 37135. I think we can just say it. It's a public.
There's only one car wash.
There's only one car wash.
Which car?
Allegedly,
and it was. This was a very controversial. There was a whole website and group dedicated to we don't want a car wash in Nolensville. We don't want it at this location. That people came out and spoke against this. It was also it wasn't allowed. It wasn't allowed use.
It was a.
That's also what they needed the zoning variance for.
Was
it wasn't allowed use in this specific area.
Was it just an OI use?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was my understanding of it, at least. But it's important to point out who all the players are. So Tommy Duggar, Jason Patrick, Brian Snyder are all aldermen at this time.
Yeah.
And Jason Patrick and Brian Snyder are business partners with, we're going to say a new name, Bill Kotis.
The developer of Bent Creek.
Correct. Bill Kotis is the developer he's what's the development name?
CK Development.
CK Development.
Is that KOTTAS?
Yes, KOTTAS. And he built Bent Creek.
Burberry
Glen.
Nolan something.
Yeah, there's another one. Well-known developer. He's been involved in Brentwood for years. He developed
Nolan spot, or those business. That business.
That's right, off Haley Industrial. Yeah. So, not a new face to Nolensville by any means, but
this is a developer getting in business with a vice mayor and a sitting alderman.
Yes, exactly. There are problematic things there in and of themselves. Then the other business partner, the other person who's involved in this business is a police officer
/ public works /
the head of public works at the time, who's no longer involved. So all of them are no longer involved in Nolensville politics, but they were at the time. And 3 of them at least were involved in the sexual harassment lawsuit.
I don't think Brian was.
Well, he wasn't named, but
that was one of the that she omitted was his. I don't think she ever mentioned his name. Which is props. You didn't get sued for sexual harassment.
He wasn't named, but same time period.
So it was definitely
probably associated. If the other 2 were named, definitely text messages involving her name.
To be clear, though, he was not in the lawsuit. Want to be careful.
He was not in the lawsuit. He was not in the lawsuit, but I think people can just assume.
I always kind of gave him and Larry Feltz props. Just kind of sidetrack this. I always gave, in my mind, the way I put this together with that lawsuit and the insider and stuff was that Brian and Larry were non-existent in that lawsuit. I'm sure that she mentioned BOMA as a whole, which probably lumped them in, but she never verbally addressed their involvement in any of that. So I always in my mind, I've always okay, well, at least they didn't do anything to make her misery working for Nolensville worse.
No, and that's fair. I think the point still stands though that like you have Jason Patrick, Brian Snyder, Brian Howell, and Bill Kotis, all players in some way, shape, or form in Nolensville politics, are an ownership group of a car wash that got special treatment while some of them were elected. Is that a good way to boil it down?
Yeah.
So, and they bought the land from Travis Blunt, who tried to hide it through an LLC.
Well, I mean, that's not hiding it.
I mean,
if you're gonna buy land, LLC is a good option.
I mean, it's a great option, but like, also
we're
like
Nolensville conspiracy theorists. Also.
Yeah, so like, I mean,
it's fishy to us.
You can track it down, but our current chair of the planning commission, you know, is the one who sold them that land. He also was involved in Nolensville politics back in the early 2000s.
How long did he own that land for? Do you know? It was a few years, right?
Yeah, like 2-3 years.
Okay.
I mean, he definitely bought it knowing like this is the only available parcel in that whole like shopping center there.
It's hard to I remember when I first moved here.
It was definitely an opportunity. I don't fault him for that.
No, not at all, because it was actually it was an interesting chunk of land, kind of in the middle of that strip mall development. It's just like a bare piece of grass because they used to put the fireworks tent there every year. That was
I only think it's interesting that all these years later, this person bought the land and then sold it to this person, and then those people are then
appointed.
seen. Yes, like this person appointed this person, and this person's involved with this person in politics, and then all of a sudden you see at an election party, like for the current election,
all the same people.
Oh my gosh, it's like the guy who sold the land for the car wash, who opened the car wash, who was elected at the time, are high-fiving each other, and it's like, I mean. Yes, I'm absolutely saying that these people are involved and in bed together and are trying to like.
I think what you're trying to say is that Jessica and Kate's election party looked a lot like the closing for Watch 37135.
Or it looked a lot like
it could. It
looked a lot like a meeting at the Good Old Boy Network from about 10 years ago.
100%. So, I think the moral of the story is. And we're going to get into some other deals that are like this.
Yeah,
there is definitely a Good Old Boy network that some people tapped into along the way, where it was like, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I'll vote on this because if I vote yes on this for you and it helps you out, then you'll vote yes on my project and it helps me out. And I think you have some players that kind of came into politics along, a certain point in time in Nolensville's history that are currently, like, they own businesses, they have real estate here, they're doing things in Nolensville, and they're still trying to be involved to this day. That's why this is relevant. That, maybe people, like, just thought, like, the process was being followed to the T. And I think to any like normal person just looking in from the outside, you'd say like, oh yeah, this is just normal. Like they went to the meeting, they got the vote, whatever. But if you start following a little bit of the relationship between X and Y person, all of a sudden it becomes a little bit like, well, maybe there were some like handshake deals here going on.
Go ahead. I was just going to say there's an interesting thing here. So this is. I have been involved in the past with like working with like a lot of churches. My wife has worked at churches before, and my dad was a pastor. Like it's similar in some ways to like being in a small town, in that if you were to like bring some of these things up, and this is what happened a few years ago, like the car wash thing. I know this for a fact. The response from the people involved was this like, "Oh shucks, we're a small town. We're just a bunch of good old people. Like we don't know what we're doing.
Yep.
Like it's just a small town. Oh come on, like that kind of response." And the issue, I believed it at the time. The issue is you live here long enough, you get to know these people, and they're not stupid. So like they're not like they'll put on the "all shucks" approach publicly,
100%.
but then you talk to them. And they know what they're doing. They work jobs that require an insane amount of intelligence, and they're involved in complicated things in their life, and then they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just a 5-year-old. I just wanted a cookie." And it's like, no, you can't be both ways. And if you don't know these people, you might just take their word for it. But they know better. They know better. They knew better. They know better. They always know better. They're too smart for this, but they want you to think that they just don't. Oh, we're just a tiny town. We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah,
like
there's also some like a bunch of personal crap with the wash. I mean, like you and me know that they screwed out over 2 people.
Sure.
To like steal that idea from under that person. Hashtag Team Bruce and Team Trey. But like. At the time, I was very pro car wash. And I still am very pro car wash. In terms of like, if I was on a board, if I was on a BZA back then, I'm 100% giving them that variance. Because that dumbass zoning ordinance did put an obstacle for them to be successful on that piece of land. That's the essence of getting that zoning across. But then those same exact people turn around and take Matthew Shilvers in Southwark and
took him to town
for him trying to maximize his parcel.
Yeah.
So it's like, why the hell does the vice mayor get to maximize the value of his parcel, but Matthew Shilvers can't?
Yep.
Like that to me is where my issue lies. Because if you go on the 401, I've done this in preparation for this episode. If you Google, if you search my name on the 401. With car wash, I'm very pro car wash. And the car wash has proved. I actually think the car wash has done great things for my arguments because they proved all the NIMBYs wrong. There's no massive flooding. There's no water shortages. There's not a lot of traffic. There's no noise.
It's a little loud.
But
when I'm close by,
I don't hear it in Ben Creek. So
touche.
But it's there was a whole entire site dedicated to stopping. There was a petition. There were yard signs, and they were all wrong. Like the car wash got built. It's a profitable business to the point where they're opening up another one in Dixon, and it's like all these people were wrong. So all the people that think that Darcy and those 200 apartments are going to ruin Nolensville, all the people that thought that Southwark might ruin Nolensville, the next whatever project's going to come by, there's going to always be NIMBYs. They're going to say Nolensville's going to get ruined. Car wash was the first example of there was a massive movement against it. The government went against public opinion, and we lived. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
Right. So they proved my concept of that. So 10 out of 10 times I'm doing the same thing.
And I just want to say that is a prime example of the 3 of us, because I'm going to take credit for your argument too. But that's a prime example of us being fair to people on the other side of things. Like you just literally said, it doesn't matter what happened prior to the car wash opening. At the end of the day, the car wash is here. It's here to stay.
It's fine.
And it's
a car wash.
Full disclosure, I've used it before. I've gone
to
it's over. Daniel. We might have to leave. We have to cancel the entire podcast.
I haven't used it in the past 3 years.
Brian Snyder's gonna love that.
I know.
I mean, I'm proud to say I've never.
Never.
I drive 20 minutes to Smyrna to get my car washed.
Smyrna, just go down Nolensville Road.
I've used it twice. Only
I go to Smyrna.
Wash and roll, baby.
Only for my Kia.
I go to Smyrna. I go to Wash and Roll in Smyrna, but I refuse. I refuse to go to.
How about this? How about from this episode on, we give a free ad to Wash and Roll on Nolensville Road.
All right, so hold up though. So I feel like maybe some people who don't know anything about this might have gotten lost already. So let's back up to the involvement of people in the government. What actually happened with voting and that kind of thing? Talk through that a little bit.
So, Mike, you'll have to shade in some color here because I'll probably forget it all. But my understanding is that so they had this concept. The zoning would allow for it in some ways, but they needed the variance. That was it was required.
Variance is basically the government saying the zoning doesn't allow for these specific things, but we're going to let you do these other little things kind of outside the lines.
Here, business wants to do X. like we need to design our space in this way, and we need the parking. The parking needs to be here. Doesn't make sense for it to be here. With the car wash, it makes sense. It's like, you're going to put the parking where the vacuums are. That doesn't need to be in the front.
It made all the sense.
But the zoning, the way it reads is like, well, the parking always has to be in the front.
Right. Okay. So that's what a variance is.
Yeah.
There we
So
go. Okay.
It's when the zoning ordinance prohibits you from optimizing or doing anything. It becomes like a hindrance to your parcel. So then you need a variance.
It makes sense why they needed it. What doesn't make sense is you have a sitting BOMA member, an alderman, Tommy, on the BZA, and then you have Jason Patrick, who is also a BOMA member at the time, as basically the one petitioning the town, asking for this variance to be made.
Right.
And granted, like, okay, people can like recuse themselves and whatever. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's going to look how it looks.
Right.
Right. And
they did the right thing. It's a much better design with it brought up to the front, vacuums in the back, much better design.
For sure.
2-story there to kind of shield the road off from like just parking lot.
For sure. And don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, if you're an elected official and you open a business at the same time as being elected,
and you ask the government for permission to do so,
correct. Like you're probably gonna, no matter what, you're
Yeah.
probably going to take heat for it. I just think that the real juice of this story is not actually what happened when they opened the car wash. It's everything that's happened since that.
Okay.
So the juice, okay, at the time, like, yeah, they followed all the protocols, they went through the steps. Like, it seemed a little shady. Like, hey, maybe this guy on the board who's voting in favor of your project and whatever. But they could have just like opened the car wash, been out of office, and just like gone on with their merry lives and never just been business owners.
Right.
But they haven't. That's the problem. It's the fact that they still want to be involved, and every single person still involved with that project, from the landowner to the business owner to the people voting on the business zoning variance, are all the ones who just can, like, basically just got involved in the last election.
So what you're saying is, because this is going to be my next question, and I think you pretty much answered it, which is I was going to ask you, like, what if you're one of those people that you've talked about in the story, what should they have done? And what you're saying is, like, basically they kind of did what they could but what you're saying is these people kind of want to have their cake and eat it too, and that's 100%. The issue. It's like there's an unwillingness to sacrifice anything personally for the integrity of the town.
Yeah,
but that's your issue with it. It's at some point you just have to say, you know what, like, this business deal is going to benefit me so much that, you know what, I'll just step away from my role in the government because I'm going to benefit this way.
That's kind of what Snyder did when he decided to not anymore. That was his claim.
Yeah, or the other way around. You say, you know what, I really care more about being in the government right now and leading this town, so I'm going to avoid this business deal for the time being for that reason. And your issue is not so much that it's one or the other. It's that they insisted on having their cake and eating it too, and trying to weave the narrowest of paths where they could say, oh, well, we did it all the right way. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, now that you're a business owner and you're still in this position, what have you done since then?
Yep.
And there's a lot to that as well, I think, that we should probably talk about.
Yep.
There's also like a funny thing that kind of goes with this. Jason Patrick just can't stay away from Nolan. He's like he's like there with the spoon and the lighter and just like in the closet. Like,
that's so good, Mike.
He becomes vice mayor, ends up quitting to watch kids play baseball. Within a few months, he's back as the chairman of the budget committee, making inflammatory posts about impact fees. Then, like, he gets caught with like weird links and text messages.
He spent more time with his family right before he got sued, right? Is that what happened? He left to get to, that was the first
I think
thing,
so.
Right?
He left to spend more time with his family, and within 3 months he realized he wants to be on
a budget committee.
A budget committee chairman.
Yeah. Okay.
Then he makes some inflammatory posts about impact fees. He gets...
Which he was wrong about.
Of course. Then he quits that. Then, like, within a few months, and what was it, like, March of 2021, he's, like, making FOIA requests. He contacts, like, people on Facebook that are making comments against him being involved again, calling people behind the scenes saying, like, I'm not involved again, even though I made this FOIA, I want to be completely out of it. Within a few weeks, he's on the news talking about how, this is what pisses me off, and I hope he hears this. He was on the news talking about how frightening it was that Lisa would sue him specifically for making these FOIA requests. I remember when the town of Nolensville told me to sue them if I wanted my FOIA request taken care of. Like, that's frightening. When the lawyer of the town and the mayor sit down in front of you and tell you, you want my text messages? Sue us.
Me. Yeah.
Like, cut the crap. Like, it's so frightening. I want to be left alone. I want to watch baseball. Like, then stop coming back. Leave.
Yeah, stop random popping on Facebook and talking about it.
The dude is like completely full of because at the end of the day, Jason Patrick, if you don't want to be involved, don't be on a camera at a re-election, at an election like celebration party.
But don't go on the news. Don't go on the news.
Don't go on the news. Yeah, for sure, don't go on the news.
So
but like,
frightening.
But like, don't be caught on an election like celebration party high-fiving all the people. It's like, dude, if you don't want to be involved in politics, don't be.
Yeah.
Just, it's that easy.
Well,
just don't be involved.
Right.
The people we talked about in the previous episode where he was seen high-fiving, literally, it's the car wash people.
Yes.
I mean, you said that already because it was like the closing. Meeting.
It's the guy that sold the land and the guy that gave him the variance. Like,
like
he's high-fiving. Our 2 new commissioners got elected. Yeah. So it's this whole. We saw a comment on our podcast or on Facebook about, can you prove it? What's the smoking gun? What is it that proves all this stuff about the 2 candidates? It's that kind of stuff. Like, you don't have to, like, it's not, it's circumstantial, I know, but you don't have to, like, have a degree in, forensic psychology to figure out that these people all like each other and are involved with each other.
Right.
It's insanity.
Yep.
All right, so we have more deals to talk about. Let's take a quick break and we'll talk more about those.
Sounds good.
All right, so we're talking about more shady stuff. We just finished up kind of talking about the car wash. We took a quick break in case you didn't notice that. But now there's other strange occurrences regarding real estate here in town. I don't know if this is the place to ask the question, but I'll ask it now, and then if we want to talk about it in a later episode, we can do it then. But is it true that just because it's old, it's historic?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, kind of backtrack.
Great question.
I'll answer your question, but I want to backtrack on what you said. Like, the shady part, it's not even the shady part. It's like the shady ways to go around, to go about the right parts. Because like we mentioned before, I at least don't necessarily think that approving the car wash was a bad deal. Like that I would have done the same thing. But how come other developers and other projects and other landowners don't get that same grace by the government?
Yeah, it seems like there's like a selective process that people got.
Don't make it so easy to make the argument that special treatment's being given to the government officials.
And it wasn't special treatment; it was just the correct treatment was applied.
Right, but my point is, don't make the correct treatment be special.
Right, apply the rules consistently, fairly. Yeah. And then to your point about old things and all that. So like obviously Morton Britton House, right? So the Morton Britton House was a private residence right where Hillside Plaza is, not Birdie's, me and Loretta's House of Bread.
It basically sits where House of Bread was.
Yeah, on that part of the development.
Yeah.
The developer was going to tear it down. Supposedly it's like 150 years old, and I don't understand this. I'm originally from Europe. Like, I was baptized in a church that was like 1,500 years old, and it wasn't historic. It was just a church in my town.
They bulldoze it in a second if they needed
to. If they had money, they would definitely just blow it up and build a new one. So yeah, like to me, I don't like it's a home that's a wooden structure that to me I don't hold significance to it, but I understand like whatever. It's old. It's part of Nolensville history. You want to preserve it. Like, so what happened there was that they had to have a special meeting to grant variances to move it. They moved it onto Tommy Duggar's property and historic district behind that yellow house that he owns.
While he was elected.
While he was elected, they rushed it. They used private donations through a charity to move it. It was $50,000. I remember that. It was like in February of 2019. I was actually stuck in traffic. I was coming back from Chicago. I was stuck in traffic when they were like moving it on a semi-truck. They put it in the floodplain too. It's like, I'm okay with the government saying, you know what, this means something to us. This is kind of special. This is kind of our history. Let's do everything to preserve it. I'm okay with that. But then how do you do that? How do you use donation money to give an alderman a house, put that house on his property, put it in the floodplain, and continue using donations to renovate it? But at the same time, if anybody wants to come on to the floodplain at all, you're like, no, we can't. Like we're gonna create all these flooding issues. You just literally drop the house in the lap of a sitting alderman into the floodplain, and that's heroic. But somebody wants to put a trail through the floodplain. It's like, you can't touch it because it's gonna flood us all.
I think the irony, honestly, and this is like very relevant, is literally last BOC meeting, Tommy Duggar, the gentleman who has this house that was donated to him and it sits in his floodplain. He owns that land.
Commercial use too.
Correct. He owns this land and it sits in his floodplain. Was up there. He was at public comments chastising Lisa for fighting to get some like flood protection in her neighborhood for a huge swath of citizens.
People's homes where they live.
Correct. Like people's actual like residences that are in the floodplain. And that development was approved under his watch as a BOMA member. He approved those developments being built in the floodplain, and now their insurance rates are going like sky high because they're in this floodplain. So it's just crazy. It's just like so crazy to me how this gentleman can literally like on one day say, well, you know what, like I need you to like grant me this like special thing so that I benefit from it, and then the next day, oh no,
He bought it for.
She's unethical.
Yeah, and well, the whole thing with the Summerlin flood, well, that pisses me off because that actually started in the CIP, which I'm also a part of. I gotta quit some of this. So like that whole thing started with the CIP, with Victor Lay, our town manager, coming to the CIP and telling us, hey, there is a flood issue in Summerlin that's undermining the integrity of the road. Like there's a very strong possibility we lose Bradfield Drive. And we're like, okay, well, how much does it cost? And I think at first estimate was like 175. That ballooned up because of the scope of work to like probably 400 grand. But it like Lisa's neighbors had nothing to do with that. It was literally Victor coming to us and saying,
correct,
like we're going to lose. There is a big possibility we lose that entire road and the entire storm drain system that runs on that road.
Right.
Okay, so let's just kind of like put a point on all of it. So Tommy Duggar is sitting there on the BOMA and he says, you know what? Let's approve this neighborhood that has a flooding issue. Let's make a stupid choice. Let's approve this. All right. So then later on, what happens is somebody wants to give me a house, a historic house that I don't have to really pay anything for. I get to generously put it on my land. And someday in the future, maybe I'll benefit from it. But also, donations got it. Also, in the future, someone realizes that old Tommy made a stupid decision when he was on the board of mayor and aldermen.
You gotta be more specific. Go ahead.
Okay, right. He made this choice of allowing a neighborhood to be built where it was going to be flooded by Mill Creek. Someone wants to call out, hey, our houses are in danger, and he wants to now call out and try to point some kind of conflict of interest, saying, how dare you, current board of commissioner member, live in a place that's going to get flooded and want it to be fixed because I approved it that way. Don't talk about that. Also, please come visit and donate to the house that someone gave me on the land that's going to get flooded every chance it gets.
100%.
I just wanted to recap that in a way that was a little bit more short.
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the issue we're talking about. And I just don't see, like, people in Nolensville don't know that happened.
Yep.
Because it was so hidden. It was this was not promoted on 4 and 1. this wasn't like a big push that the town made to like make sure that everyone would donate to this, and it was super transparent. Like, to be fair, the Historic Society, which is like this non-profit that's like separate from the town, they're the ones that are funding the rehabilitation of this house, right?
What is going to happen at that house when it gets rehabbed?
It's a commercial zone. He can do anything he wants.
My understanding,
you can sell it, dude.
My understanding is the house is going to be a musume.
Of what?
Of some, maybe like Nolensville artifacts, whatever.
A broken wheel?
I mean, oh man!
Don't trigger me down.
Yeah, wow, like so many jokes.
I'm sorry. I just like that's my. I said it earlier, but like, I still don't understand in this town the concept of it being old means we have to protect it.
Yeah.
Like it can be old and be really. Like there's a lot of stuff in this town. Like, what happened there? What happened in that house? Someone was a farmer for a while, and I understand like that's gonna like raise people are gonna lose their minds at me for saying this, but like tell me why it's important. Like I went to there's that place down in Spring Hill that was a restaurant for a while. It was like a historic battlefield with like a house that was a plantation, and they had a bunch of stuff that told me exactly the historic events. That like I could go find in the Library of Congress things that happened, or like other documents that talked about what happened here.
You're talking about significance. There's significance that happened.
Not just somebody lived here for a while.
Right.
That's all over this place.
So by that scale, every house in Nolensville one day is going to become a historic home.
I mean,
my home in 150 years, like we're going to be trucking this thing onto Tommy's.
I think that's the mentality. Is that like if like Nolensville's so small and there's like only so many people that lived here back in the day. That it's like if you lived here and owned land, you were a part of the history, so therefore your name's historic. I don't buy it. Like
we have roads named after you. Right?
Right.
Whole development's named after you now.
I mean,
scales. I mean, that's a family.
Here's the hard thing. It's like I think if you really dig into Nolensville's history, it's not that friendly. Like if you really look at it, there's some stuff people don't really want to talk about. We're in the South.
Yeah.
Slavery was a very real thing.
Isn't it like the last public lynching in the United States happened like in
Nolensville?
Yeah.
Somewhere, like it was a Nolensville address.
For sure. And like, so, I mean, yes, is there history here? 100%. But I think we have to ask the question, like, and go like one level deeper. Like, is there history we really want to celebrate?
Right.
In Nolensville.
I'm sure there is. I mean,
I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying, like, I think too often people that are concerned about history in Nolensville simply say it's old and it
has to be preserved,
and everything around us is growing, so it has to be preserved. And it's like, well, wait, let's go one level deeper and ask, what does this old thing really represent to the history of Nolensville? Because if it doesn't actually represent anything, great, it's old architecture, cool. Like, who gives a shit? You can look that up on Google. Like, if it doesn't actually have a historic piece of Nolensville's history as a town in the storyline, who cares?
Well, it's like if you go by that Morton Britton house sitting on Tommy's land now back there, it's like it looks like a trailer home just sitting on some block. Like, it's like not that like
somebody just knocked out all the windows to that.
Oh really?
That? Somebody put rocks through the window. Wasn't me. This episode's gonna make it sound. It was not.
Was it the day after the election?
Right.
No, it was before the election.
Okay. It's just like come on, like you spent $50,000,
not more,
or raised
to move it,
to do this. Like I don't think there's going to be another $50,000 laying around from residents wanting to donate again when something truly historic comes up. Like you wasted your opportunity on something that you really just wanted to save because it's old, and lo and behold, a former alderman got to have it on his land. It's just mind-blowing to me.
My mother taught me something very early on in age. I don't even know why I was taught this, but she always taught me follow the money. And I just think that the moral of the Morton Brittenhouse story is to follow the money. So if you look at who was involved in it, from a voting member of BOMA to the Historic Society came out and like put out some language around, well, wasn't a BOMA member involved, and like they have all these like.
Remember, I kept asking because I knew the answer.
Oh my gosh!
They
have all these like FAQs on like who was involved, where's the money going, who owns
What's it gonna be?
It's like, okay, like they're dancing around the issue, which is that like Tommy Duggar was a member of BOMA and he owned the land, and he was a voting member of everything that happened to get this house to his land, and then he stands to make money off of what this thing becomes,
because he actually owns it now, right?
He
not only he doesn't even have to sell it to make money. He can just mortgage it. He can take
correct.
he can take a HELOC on this thing.
He negotiated this.
It's an asset.
It's an asset.
Yeah.
Right.
He negotiated this deal to where, like, okay, fine, he didn't vote on it. He recused himself. Cool, dude. But like, you still had handshake deals, and you knew every single alderman who was going to vote on it. And they all voted for this piece of like property to get transferred to your property, and it sits there now, and you're not paying a dime because it's all donations that are going to rebuild this thing, and then you're going to turn it into a museum or something. To who's going to make the money from that? The Historic Society?
I know that like both of you guys being marketing guys have to at least appreciate the spin on that. The marketing spin of like, no, this is not about making money. This is about doing the public a service.
Yes.
He saved the house. It's like Jake Paul saying, "I'm just a YouTuber."
He came in at the 11th hour magically.
Yeah,
it's like, of course,
he saved this.
Of course, nobody else wanted to save this house. It's
hey, Nolensville. Anytime you have a free house, I'll take it.
Yeah,
I will bite the bullet.
That's so generous of you, Mike.
I will take
Thank
that
you so
free
much.
house, especially if it comes with commercial zoning and variances on a floodplain.
All right, so
please, allow me.
touche.
all right. So speaking of follow the money, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Publix and that piece of land and the history of how miraculously Publix stands to build on the corner of Rocky Fork and Nolensville Road, when we were told by so many self-proclaimed experts that intersection is a terrible intersection for a grocery store. It won't work.
We were told that by our own leaders.
Yeah,
our own leaders told the
Kroger was told that by the experts, because Kroger doesn't know. But yeah, both of our boards told a grocer to not build on that intersection.
Yeah.
And I know I'm being a bit facetious, but I don't want to be the one to reveal. There's something, honestly, and I told this to my wife. I said to her literally, this is going to be, maybe I'll tease this for our intro. My goal in doing this podcast is what we're about to talk about. I only am doing this podcast so that we can talk about what we're about to talk about.
Let's hold it off for like episode 9.
I know, right? Let's tease it for a while. No, I've known about this for so long.
Yep.
And it boils my blood so much that I was like, this is why this podcast exists.
This is the proof.
Yes.
Of Small Town Charm.
This is what, but I don't want to be the one because it's not my story to share. But the thing is, this thing, and I think maybe Chris, you might be the one to talk about this a little bit.
Sure.
But this thing has been circulating around certain crowds of people for a while, known to exist, and I have been banging the drum since I saw it that this needs to see the light of day. It's taken way too long, but let's talk about Publix and the fact that land at some point, maybe, I don't even know, still does belong to the former mayor, rest in peace, Jimmy Alexander. I know you're a great dad, great grandfather. We're talking about you as a mayor. Belongs to the mayor's girlfriend.
Yes.
Talk to me about that, Chris.
Okay, so there's a lengthy story here, and
We got 9 minutes.
yes,
On this segment, we'll take a break at some point.
I think we need to cut to the next segment, but
We can get-
we'll at least do the lead up. So, yeah, there's a very, very deep story here that I don't think any of us, when we got involved in Nolensville politics and started paying attention, I don't think any of us realized this is what we were dealing with. It like we just thought, okay, like maybe somebody's getting like some cash for a neighborhood, or like somebody's got some handshake deal to get a car wash approved, for example. I don't think any of us realized that, like, no, there's like some actual big retailers looking to develop here in Nolensville, and the people in charge are having meetings. Number one, are having meetings with them. Two, are telling the public like a different story, and three, are basically trying to negotiate all the terms of this deal to benefit somebody they're connected to.
And they're designing and planning the entire town to where this fits.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
That's the big one.
Yes, and I think if you go back far enough in Nolensville's history, and you look at like, so there, people have to imagine there was a time when like Rocky Fork didn't dead end into Nolensville. Like Rocky Fork went through the ball fields.
Where old Nolensville
Road is now. Yeah, like
Nolensville
there was a time when like you couldn't drive, like you couldn't drive through all the cornfields.
Rocky Fork didn't connect into Clovercroft.
Correct.
It connected into Old Clovercroft.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so your drive was like, I'm going to drive by the Methodist church and the shops.
Right.
And the ball fields.
That was Rocky Fork.
That was
Yep.
Rocky Fork.
Yep.
There's a reason that was realigned several years ago, and the person who owned the land that it was realigned through was the mayor, who's the girlfriend of the mayor.
Not at the time though. So she is like the offspring or in the lineage of the person that actually started the town.
Yeah, sure.
So the Green, so like Sherwood Green, like they used to own all that land. Obviously now it's a subdivision. Nolensville Elementary School, they owned all that land. Now it's a school. Like if you trace it all the way back, that whole entire Rocky Fork corridor thing, they owned a big chunk of that. And then cutting through Rocky Fork, connecting into Clovercroft, did create a very desirable piece of land there. But to your point, that entire stretch, like all the new stuff that we have in the Nolensville Historic District, has been designed with the anticipation of that Publix going in on that one corner.
Correct.
So like when people talk about well, Darcy needed density to make it work and Publix didn't. Publix has built-in density because we've already approved Greenbrook South and Greenbrook North on both ends of those, which is essentially the same exact.
They literally just approved it separately.
Yeah,
right before it.
It took 3 votes, but Publix 100% has the density there too.
Yeah.
Like they'll have the same amount of people around Publix, probably even more so because you have Sherwood Green right there that connected with a bridge. That $1 million bridge.
For
congratulations, you spent $500,000 on a bridge.
I think it goes to say for 10 years, BOMA basically took. I mean, so if you look at Miss Green's, like where her estate lives, right? Like where her house lives on Rocky Fork. She's the big white house. It's
right next
like
to NES.
Yes, right. It's like the grand mansion, old looking, like plantation style, whatever. Like, so, and I just think people need to understand everything in Ballinger, she sold.
Yeah.
Her family sold.
Yeah. Yep.
Her family was Ballinger. Ballinger was her.
I didn't know that.
Everything in Nolensville Elementary School was her. Everything for Greenbrook South was her. So if you go to Cabo's if you go to Cornell Brothers, if you go to
That's north. Yeah.
no, that's south. That's Greenbush South.
No, it's north.
That's north.
South is the one's not built yet.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you're good.
North,
My directions are wrong.
You're good. You're good.
No, but everything in that development is her. Everything that's like being developed is also her, and then like the Publix development is right in between it all. Like this is a master plan. It really is.
And
like
Jimmy Alexander has a planning background of like 5-6 decades in
correct.
industrial.
Like this wasn't by mistake. It was designed this way. At some point in time, the two of them met. They created a relationship, and this corner, and I don't fault them for it. It's a great corner. There's a lot of traffic. Like all the metrics make sense for why you would pick this corner. The problem is when you start saying, "Well, my corner," which means the land that
you're gonna
you are
so bad. You're gonna go into a rant.
Good. But this is the problem. The problem is like when the votes came down, and it's like, well, my corner for Publix is the only thing we can vote for, and all of a sudden Kroger's like, well, hey, this corner across the street that has the fire department and has other land available.
Yes,
we want to buy that, and we want to put a Kroger here. And all of a sudden, like the people voting were like, "No way."
That's my biggest issue.
Yeah,
so like I've known about the Publix going on that Greenland for a while. I even I wrote emails to Jimmy Alexander at the time when he was mayor, asking him like, "Hey, I know this Publix is coming. I've seen the videos of you sitting there with Miss Green and Robbie Swan, the developer for Watkins Development. Like everybody knows. Like we've Googled it. We've like searched all the internet to figure out."
Pause. Hold up. No, we got time. I just want to point out that is what I was alluding to. That is what I said. This is why I'm making this podcast. I've seen the video of Jimmy and people. I've never lied on the show. Just I want to point out before we hit the break and we come back. That is what I'm talking about. Jimmy and Janice alone at Amico's. I'll tell you where it was. I've seen the video.
The developers
at a 4-seater table.
Sitting with the developers of Publix while he was mayor.
Who we saw years later.
Yes. Coming back and presenting the
exact development.
Like
it was brand new.
Like we'd never seen this before. We've seen that is
this stuff has been in the works for years.
I'm telling you, this is
4
why
years prior to it coming up to Boma or EOC.
This is why I said this is why I wanted to do this podcast. This one video. We're not going to show it here now, but I can swear on anything you care to trust me on. It's real. I've seen the video of Jimmy Alexander and his girlfriend Janice Green sitting at a table at Amico's with the two representatives of the real estate firm that represents Publix 4 years before this got presented.
Right.
Yep.
Sorry, I just wanted to stop because you gave it away there, so I want to make sure we get something.
You're good. Let's take a break and then I'll continue my rant because I have a really good rant.
I love it. I want it. Yes.
Really good rant.
Yes.
All right. So like we had to take a break there, so I got a chance to kind of put my thoughts together here. With that video, I've seen the video way before like Beaumont got ousted out of the government, and it was in Jimmy Alexander's heyday when he was ruler of all. I emailed him. I asked him about the Publix on the green property. He told me no Publix. I'm like this is why the insider exists, because I know you're lying to me, dude. Like I've seen it, I've researched it. Like the guys, the dude that you're meeting with, it is on the front page of the development company that primarily deals with Publix.
Well, say his only client is Publix. I looked that up.
Right.
The guy's only client. He has one client.
It's Publix.
It's Publix.
Like there's no Publix coming on the green property. And then like right away, and then not only that, but then he emails Derek Adams saying your buddy is asking questions about this corner. Like they're wrong. Like
there's no grocery.
There's no grocery.
I've never had a meeting about a grocery in Nolensville.
Fast forward 2 years after that email, there's a proposal for a grocery.
Right.
And we actually ended up saving that project because that project originally was supposed to be a McDonald's and a tire discount with a Publix in the back. It was supposed to be like the trashiest of trash inside of a historic district. And if it wasn't for the charter change, if it wasn't for the BOC implementing a moratorium in that area for 6 months to get their zoning in order, that happens and it becomes like this.
That's what you would have had.
Yeah. So really, what you're saying is, Miss Green,
you're welcome.
we'd like our check.
Yeah.
Like I would like I would like my finder's fee for helping you develop that land.
And it's. I was against that project. I'm still against that project because I don't think that putting a 50,000 square foot store inside of your historic downtown is appropriate. Like you don't have a Publix inside of downtown Franklin. No. You don't have a Kroger inside of like any small downtown. They're usually on the outskirts of town, right? Whatever. My biggest issue with this whole thing is that the government legitimately picked winners and losers. There's more legacy families. I understand protecting the legacies of these families that started the town, and I appreciate the fact that the Greens came here and that you can trace their lineage back to when the wheel broke. I do appreciate that. But they weren't the only ones. Right across the street from the Greens is Frank Wilson. He's also a legacy family. He also had a grocer propose on his property, and the government said, "Screw you, go south."
It's a terrible intersection for a grocery store.
Why
one versus the other?
Right, and then they're carbon copies of each other. They're on the opposite sides of the street. They were neighbors for 200 years. The government picked one to win and one to lose.
Correct.
Like I'm not okay with that.
Yep.
Like even like you were mentioning the rerouting of Rocky Fork. Like there's a legacy family that they got their land eminent domain by the government, the Joe property.
Right.
Like he ended up suing the town for like the mistreatment of his property because they cut it all weird.
Yeah.
Like there's more than just the Greens and the Morton Britons that are the legacy families. There are the Wilsons, there are the Jobs that got the chef from the government because the government picked which ones get to win and which ones get to lose. Yep. I'm not okay with that. Like it's like if you want to link this whole episode to like I'm not anti car wash. I'm not anti Morton Britain. I'm not anti like green development. Like I'm anti the government picking those to win and then not applying those same principles to the exact equivalent of those projects. Like why did Matthew Shilvers not get the same treatment as the car wash?
You're anti-consistency and you're anti-shady dealings and you're anti like people having their hand in the cookie jar, to steal your phrase from earlier. Like it too often, if you like trace Nolensville's voting record on development, too often there has been someone involved in that development that is also a voting member of the town. It's just happened far too often for that to be a coincidence.
We just named 3, right?
I mean,
I'm sure there's more.
But I mean, you look at all of it. It's like, okay, great. It's a small town. This stuff happens. We get it. It's like you read about it in some other small town, and you're like, oh, like of course that's how it works. You never think it's going to be in your backyard until like 15,000 people move here. Well, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's in my backyard.
Yeah.
The whole problem I have with it is just that it would have been so easy in all of these stories we're talking about to have just done the right thing.
Yep.
And you could have still got what you wanted.
Correct.
It's that thing.
Apply the same rules to everybody.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like don't apply the rules that are beneficial only to yourself or only to the people that you picked. Because like I'm sure that like 40 years ago, Jimmy didn't sit down and say like I'm going to move to Nolensville one day. I'm going to behoove the legacy family and then make this law. I'm like that's obviously not a master plan. But like if you're going to say like there's a grocery store that's appropriate in this area, like why isn't it appropriate across the street? Like that's insane to me. Like if it's appropriate to put a house in a floodplain, why is it not appropriate to do other things in floodplains somewhere else? If it's appropriate to grant a variance for a car wash in this area, why is it not appropriate to entertain the idea of apartment buildings or condos like 2 blocks down the street. Like, I just don't get
We're
it.
literally about to witness this live for the first time in
2 years.
Well, yeah. I wish it was so much longer, but you're right, in 2 years. But like literally, Haley Gallick, who is on the commission right now, owns land in the triangle, which is like this piece of property that is like a bunch of property owners all scattered about.
It's Williams, Clovercroft, Road.
Williams, York Road, Nolensville, between Clovercroft. There's this whole like piece of land, and it's a bunch of property owners, and they all represent what is proposed as
the new village,
the future village. It's like the historic district spillover, and what could be in the future. Most, I would say the majority of them want to sell.
They were out forced in the different places.
Some of them are part of the Kroger project. Some of them want to sell as a part of like being attached to that, and like a developer could come in and say, "Well, we're going to build stuff that's like auxiliary to the Kroger project." But I think it goes without saying. It's like Haley Gallick owns land. She literally lives in a house that's attached to the village, to like what people are proposing. She's part of it.
Yeah.
So, like, she has a vested interest in this, and it's no different than what's happened before. It's like, okay, I own land and I vote. This is how things have worked in Nolensville for years. I own land and I vote, and so therefore I'm going to vote to control things in a certain way. And now you have Haley Gallick, who says, I own land and I vote. And honestly, I don't understand how she doesn't vote to just be a part of this. Because
she's like the anti. She's like, I don't want.
I mean, it's like I mean, she would be a millionaire overnight. It's like, I don't know what she bought her house for, but it's like, it's great. Like, you're gonna like make millions of dollars. Who cares? Who cares what gets built on your land? You're gonna make a ton of money, but. Maybe she does care about like how it develops and whatnot. But like at the end of the day, even if she cares about like protecting a certain like philosophy of development or like how Nolensville shapes up in the future, she still runs into the problem of I'm a landowner and I vote, and this is how Nolensville has always operated. Mm-hmm. So how does she remove herself?
She's very cautious. She's an underwriter for an insurance company. She is cautious.
Not any insurance company though.
Our insurance company.
The town's
insurance company. I think that needs to be said.
I know that you have beef with that. I necessarily don't. I think she was in marketing before that.
Communications.
Yeah. So she was in communications before that. Now she's an underwriter, which is a telltale sign of a poorly run organization. No offense. Pep. Right, I mean...
Yeah, I get you.
But she's done a pretty good job, which I attribute to you, because you're always out to, like, file an ethics complaint. But she's done a very good job of recusing herself when there's pitfalls there. Like, I know there was an MTP issue that she recused herself from. I hope... And I'm expecting her to recuse herself from any sort of rezone to her property. But which I do respect her for that. I do respect her for saying I can become a millionaire overnight, or I can get my way of no development ever. Sure. And she to be able to step away from that. That's honorable, because it hasn't been done in Nolensville. Like, that's not what Nolensville's been doing.
Yeah, but I will say on the record, on our show and to the camera, if Haley votes in any way to devalue herself, meaning to devalue the land that she owns, I will have an immense amount of respect for her, because nobody ever in office has ever voted that way.
But do you know what I would do if I was in her shoes? I would make sure there's a couple of candidates who just got elected
who could do my bidding for me.
Who could vote however I wanted, where I don't have to do that.
Truth.
And then someone could vote in a way that helps me.
The next 2 years are going to suck.
Without before. Well, she's got 2 more, I guess.
Yeah.
My point is, I would just do that, right?
Sure.
I'm not saying she's doing that. I'm just saying I would do that.
She can position herself to vote advantageously as if she doesn't support the stuff.
Yeah.
And it can still get done.
She could still get voted. So, by the way, if I ever run for office, I'm not saying I would do that. My point is, if I was her, and I maybe wanted to help myself,
True.
That's what I would do. Just pointing that out. It's not. I actually don't think that's right. I wouldn't do that.
It's a good tip, though.
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe she'll take my advice. We'll see. We'll see in January if she takes my advice. So that's an interesting kind of concept of you've got some people coming in who feel a certain way, but realistically, though, honestly, I'm being facetious when I say that. I would not expect either of those 2 candidates to vote that way, right? You wouldn't expect them to vote for that triangle because that's kind of anti what they ran. Well, they didn't really run on anything, so I don't know.
No, they ran on controlling density.
So that would be the opposite of what if they were to vote to do something that would help a Haley out. That actually would be anti what they ran on, though, right?
Right.
So
Haley wins if and then wins according to my perspective because you win in my eyes if your land becomes more valuable.
Right.
So Haley becomes richer if that triangle becomes CD5. I'm not sure if she wants it. Everything she's indicated so far, she doesn't want it. She wants to slow down growth, be more controlled growth. I'm a big proponent of being fair. She hasn't the only time I've ever had any sort of problem with her was when she leaked my email to one of those knockoff TNI sites.
Yeah, wannabes.
And then but she's been fairly on the right side of the law. Well, always been on the right side of the law, but she's been fairly consistent on being on the same exact side of it. And I will give her credit. She does have a platform, and she keeps to that platform, which is get your votes. If enough people agree with your platform, you put your platform out there. You went on that. You should continue with your platform. So there is respect from my end to that, where it's hold your values, hold them strong, do your thing.
Yeah.
I don't it would be not only would it be boring, but it would fly off the rails if there was 5 Joels on a board, or if there was 5 Derek's on a board.
Yeah,
right. Then it kind of becomes like what Boma was. There was 5 people that had the same kind of idea. There was no contentious votes. They all had the same vision, and they got everything that either got
everything was unanimous.
Right. Everything was very much all for one, one for all, where it's we're gonna do this our way. And now you do have debates, you do have tension, you do have a lot of votes that go 3-2, 4-1, right? Which is what you want to see from the board.
It's healthy.
Right? Yeah, it is healthy.
Speaking of that, I think we have enough time to hit real quick. Just and you guys can say no, don't talk about this. But I know that the planning commission just voted to move forward with the zoning, and it was 5-4. Right, that's right. That was it.
Yeah.
But the most important piece of that, I think the salient piece of information that came from that was Derek Adams basically said before calling the question was, we've all got to a point where we've all said our piece. We all, no one's changing their minds.
Right. You're not changing anybody's mind.
Right. And also the whole town and country vision, the country people got everything they wanted, and the town is only sacrificed, and the country people are still saying, no, we want more. Let's call the question. They voted, it got moved forward. So I think I'm just thinking about Haley's position as it might be moving forward, all of that. It's when you're an elected official and you ran on a platform and you know what you were elected to do, you can stick to your guns even when you get a couple of emails of people telling you, oh no, I don't like this, because you told people what you wanted to do, right, and a majority voted for you, and you can do those things. my fear with, real estate, this is kind of what we're talking about in this episode. My fear with the two new commissioners is that, I've said this is so redundant, I feel like a broken record, but they didn't really run on anything.
Right.
They might feel like they ran on something, but if they feel that way, it's because they had people behind the scenes telling them what to do.
Yep.
Because they did not communicate that publicly.
Correct.
So if they feel like they have a mandate from people who voted for them, it's only because somebody is pulling their strings.
What do you think is a greater number? The amount of people that wrote me in, or the amount of people that know what the density number in the village is?
Oh, people who wrote you in.
Right? Do you think there's 200 people in town that know what the density maximums are?
No.
No.
Definitely
No
not.
way.
So
Definitely
this being a referendum or a mandate from the public
Yeah.
is a total crock of crap. It
is.
Like,
it is.
Like, what are the setbacks in village? You voted for Kate. You put a mandate on town. What are the setbacks in village?
Yep.
Like-
No, to your point, Mike, I just don't think that people. So let's just call it what it is. People showed up to vote because there are other people they're voting for in this election. There are other people on the ballot.
Yeah.
There's state. There's federal.
You talking about the red wave?
The
ripple.
R.I.P.
I'm not getting into I'm not getting into a side, but in Williamson County, there's a very specific side that people. It's a high percentage. People tend to show up to vote for a certain side of things. Sadly, I don't feel like the total country is represented in our county.
Sure.
So I'm just trying to be fair to everyone. But that's how our county votes. That's how it is. People show up, though, in droves to vote on federal and state things. They don't necessarily give a about what's going on in local politics.
In Tennessee, especially in Williamson County, it's a very big pride thing.
Yes.
I'm going to be the wave this year.
They don't care about local stuff.
Fort.
I would gander to say that 25% of people that vote in Nolensville, that's a very small percentage, actually cared about what's happening in Nolensville. 75% of people just live here and they don't give a
I'm starting to understand why people think I'm a liberal. I do crack a lot of jokes at the conservatives.
Yeah. So
they're just so easy.
to that point, though,
jokes,
there's a lot of people that show up to vote because they feel like it's their duty. They need to have their voice heard. And if you notice when you go through the voting topics, right? It's the last thing you vote for is the local election. Mm-hmm. It's the last thing, and you're asked to pick two. Cool. So after you get through 3 pages of voting for stuff, and you're asked to pick two for Nolensville, do you really think most people were actually paying attention? No. And do you really think that most people were paying attention to the weeks leading up to the election? No, because that's just how things work. People only voted for the charter change because it was literally the only issue.
Right.
It was yes or no. Do you want the government to change?
Yeah.
Always yes.
To our benefit, it was a very easy issue. It was do you think the government's
Yeah, and then we had the benefit too of being the positive option on that.
Correct.
Most people, even if you don't,
are you for or against?
You want to be positive, right? Even if you don't know what you're talking about.
But in this scenario, it's hey, there's 3 people running. There's kind of a write-in. Maybe you've heard of him, but at the end of the day, people are going to pick 2.
Well, here's
and people did.
Well, so here's the thing.
People did.
You put yourself in the shoes of someone who is like what you described, which is I showed up to the polls because I care about. I want to elect Jack Johnson or whatever it is.
Sure.
Jack Johnson killed it though.
Well, he was unopposed, right?
He still killed it.
Right. Yeah, way to go. Shout out. I've got a friend who runs Forkshire's campaign. So shout out to I'm not on that side of things, but way to go. You did it. But no, you show up to the polls and you're there to vote for Jack or whatever it is. And then you got some guy walking by saying, hey, did you know this one candidate's got a pending DUI?
Right.
Stay away from that. And of course, as we talked about previously, that was a lie. It's not true. Could be interpreted as illegal. We'll see. But that happened to you. You don't even know about this stuff. You're just here to vote for Jack. And all of a sudden some guy says, don't vote for her. Because this thing, you don't have time to figure out what the truth is or not. So you go in there and you vote for Jack because you really care about that. You vote to maybe end slavery in Tennessee, which is another element on the ballot. Right. Mind-blowing, but you did it. You voted for that too. You knew about that, but you didn't know about this little thing happening here in town. But somebody told you, maybe don't vote for this one person because there's a pending DUI. Not true. Again, but you don't know that. So you go and you say, all right, well, there's 3 names on the ballot. Someone told me not to vote for this one.
Yep.
The thing tells me to vote for 2.
Who else am I going to vote for?
So way to go, Joe. You did it.
I don't know. It's still so fresh. It happened like a week ago, or like less than a week. It's Saturday. We're going this on Saturday. It happened on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I looked at the data, and obviously like don't have the full picture. I just have just rough numbers. I mean, it's almost like the electorate was too in tune with the news, because like I do legitimately think that she had the lead going into the news stories, and then the news stories you see the headline, you see the newsreel, you watch the nightly news. I don't know who still does, but I mean obviously people still do, and then like that all flipped. Like that's what the numbers are telling me, is that like she lost the election day by 200 votes. It was like 1,000 per Kate and Jessica, and she had 800. So she lost by like 25% on day of, and she was only down by 4 on the end of early. And it was 2 days of early voting, which were the 2 busiest days of early voting after the news story broke out. So like that trend would suggest that she led up until the news story broke.
So let's bring it back a little bit to real estate, because that's what we're talking about this. So what you said though is all true. I agree with that analysis, that's what happened. What that says to me, and we said this in the last episode, is that's fine. If the method moving forward is involving the local news in this nonsense, then we've got a ton of real estate deals and weird conflicts of interest that from now on we'll just make sure we involve the local news.
I mean, that's
in those things.
If elections from now on is who can have the catchiest slogan, like, I mean, it's gonna be a wash from now on.
Right.
If it's who can go more viral, like we're like, I'm not losing an election again.
So for the last like 2 elections in Nolensville, because I lived here long enough I've gone through 2 of them. Both elections, you would drive down Nolensville Road and other side roads, and you would see huge signs that said Duggar Realty. Tommy Duggar was an elected official and had huge real estate signs. He still does to this day.
I think there's only one left.
Well, I mean,
those contracts run out.
It's either dwindled or he sold the land for them. One of the two. But nonetheless, like, you had people that were involved that were actively selling land in town, and were involved in the aspects of like controlling zoning and making sure things went a certain way. Those people are still involved. Like whether or not they're gonna like financially benefit because they're like the seller's agent on the land doesn't matter. Like they still want to control how things get zoned. How like they still have some financial aspect. And I think that's the point we're trying to drive home is these people at the end of the day were involved for years and years and years in planning the town, being involved in politics, and were also like kind of doing this side hustle where they like were real estate agents, were getting side benefits, handshake deals, under the table money, whatever. Like that all was happening in some way, shape, or form to what we understand. it's still going on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
to wrap this all up,
people are calling real estate agents.
Yes, like the day after this election, somebody called a real estate agent and said, guess what? My guy controls the council. So your zoning that you think is going to come through for your like client is never going to happen. So you should just like stop selling their land. That like this is mind blowing. It's 2022. Like the fact that people think this town isn't going to grow is crazy, and the fact that like people still think that they can control things from behind the scene is crazy. And we're going to call out every single instance of that we find.
Apply it fairly or don't apply it.
Correct.
Right. So to kind of put a bow on it, like I think that the message is to anyone out there watching, if in the future at any time that someone comes up to the Board of Commissioners and presents any kind of development, anything like that, do a little bit of research, dig into who they are, who have they talked to, who stands to benefit from this. As Chris said earlier, his mom taught him, follow the money, see where it actually goes. We'll do our best as much as we can to kind of keep you updated on what we think that is. But again, don't ever take our word for it. The most fair thing we can do is say, go look it up for yourself so that you don't fall into the trap that everybody we're talking about wants you to fall into, which is taking somebody's word for it. So do your own research. We love that you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, but don't just take us as the source of truth either. Do your own research, and I think you'll find the truth.
And I think the best way to do that is engagement. If you ask us how we know, we'll tell you how we know, and you can determine if that will be your line of research. 100%.
All right, but for now, thanks for watching Small Town Charm. We'll be back next time. Thanks for watching or listening. Bye.